What's up, Rescue Squad? Did you know that it was possible to use classic controllers intended for Virtual Console on your Switch 1 and your Switch 2? You can use any of them. You can use the NES and Famicom controllers. You can use the SNES and Super Famicom controllers. You can use the N64 controllers. You can use the Mega Drive controllers. If the Joy-Cons are too unfun to use and they're not doing it for you, then you can use your classic controllers. Believe it or not, they are not exclusive to using them on their respective Virtual Console modules on the Switch 1 and 2. You'll be able to get decent use out of them there, but in case you don't feel like you're getting enough mileage from them on those, you can use them in plenty of other places as well. The NES and Famicom controllers, for example, can be used not only on NES and Famicom games, and they're region-free, by the way, but you can even use them on other games that use two buttons, as long as they're compatible with D-pads. You can use them on Atari 7800 games, as long as you set the controls up. You can use them on Master System games, and you can use them on TurboGrafx 16 and TurboGrafx CD games, due to those having controllers that are similar to the NES. Now, why would you want to use a more limited controller like this? First of all, it has a D-pad, and it has a set of two buttons, which may be more familiar to more old school players. And in some games, like Atari 50 in particular, I'll give you an example. You can change up, down, left, and right individually. You can decide which button is throw and which one is start and jump. Of course, I made them A to jump and B to throw things, like what it usually is in NES games. But you go down to the last three, reset game, pause game, and game options, and you notice that they cannot be changed. Pause is always plus, options is always minus, which is select, and reset game is L. If you press this on any of your controllers during gameplay, you're going to take an L. You're going to get the worst punishment possible, which is an immediate game over and an instant trip back to the title screen, like this. See? Started the whole game over again. And if you're familiar with the NES and Famicom controllers on the Switch, they have very small L and R buttons. So it's not as big of an issue. It is almost entirely mitigated. And the 2-button layout is very compatible and fits in perfectly with 8-bit consoles like the 7800. There's even instances where you are able to use the shoulder buttons in gameplay, and you're able to use the you're able to have an extra pair of buttons there. And if you need more buttons, well, you can just use the Joy-Cons. You can just use the Joy-Cons to press X. Here, I am playing Trevor McFur with the NES controller, the Famicom controller. In my previous video, I used the Super Famicom controller. And you can even use the NES controller on the Switch 2 as well as the Switch 1. The way you use it on Switch 2 is you charge it on Switch 1 and you make it so you make it so you can pair it on Switch 2. By the way, I've discovered a new one of these overloads. And when the battery runs out, you just go back to Switch 1 and put it on, or you put it in a Joy-Con charger that works on Switch 1, and you can use it on Switch 1. Or you can sign it in again, because it'll be signed into Switch 1, and put it back on Switch 2. It is a bit of a hassle, but it works, and will let you use one of your favorite classic controllers of old on new games. You would also be surprised at the amount of games well after the 8-bit generation that you can use these controllers on. You would be surprised at how many N64 and GameCube games work with these, or games on other more advanced consoles. I'm currently showing you playing a Jaguar game with an NES controller, a Famicom controller, and you can try out which other games work with which other controllers. It's a great way to get more mileage out of them and save a lot of wear and tear on your Joy-Con control sticks and stave off the drift. So as you can see, this controller offers great precision. It's usable on a variety of games across many different consoles, as long as you can set the controls up. You may not be able to do that all the time, but overall, it is a very useful thing you can do with your Switch. So, next time you get a port of a Super Nintendo or even PlayStation RPG, try using the Super Nintendo controller on it. Next time you have an 8-bit athletic platform game, try using that on it. Not only do these controllers work great with ports of their own games, but they also work fantastic with consoles they're not even intended for. And it can be a game in itself, working through your collection and seeing which games are possible or even advantageous using your classic controllers. They do not have to become e-waste once Virtual Console is over and done with. They can become controllers you can always get use out of. This is not just a great feature for people who are nostalgic for old controllers and old games. It's also a great feature for people who like saving money. And it gets even better when you factor multiplayer into the equation, where instead of having to buy a bunch of pairs of Joy-Cons or having to buy four NES controllers or four Super Nintendo controllers, you can actually just get an NES controller, a Super Nintendo controller, or I guess you'll get two NES controllers, and maybe another controller you like, or you can use your Joy-Cons to have 4 players. These controllers with the D-pads previously did not work on Switch Virtual Console for the N64. However, the new controller changing feature added in 2025 allows you to change the directional buttons, change the control stick to the directional buttons, and make it so you can move your character in a 3D N64 game with the D-pad. So that makes N64 games playable with more controllers, and it makes multiplayer a lot easier and a lot more affordable. And you can even You can even change the controls on all 4 players, which you will have to do in order to get D-pads to register for the N64. And it will always be full tilt when you press a direction. But if you're tired of using the Joy-Cons or the N64 controller, it's a great feature. It's a great way to be able to use the controller you want and not have to deal with joystick drift. So that really is going to be the appeal for a lot of people. You can use whatever controller you want as long as it's available on the Switch. And the same applies for the Switch too. You can even do this with the GameCube controller. If you feel that the GameCube controller is more comfortable, you can use that as well. And this is especially great for the Virtual Boy, given that the Virtual Boy controller was not released alongside the Virtual Boy module on Virtual Console. Instead, you can use the Super Nintendo controller, or even better yet for a lot of games, the N64 controller. It's not a perfect replacement, but you will at least get something that's mostly there and functions. And it's just nice that you have any options other than the Joy-Cons. So, if you've got a library of Switch games lying around, and you need an excuse to play them, or you've beaten them and you want to play them again, try playing them with your classic controllers that you bought for the Switch. Try playing them with the NES controllers, Famicom controllers, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, N64, GameCube controllers. Use any controller on any one of these retail cartridge games that aren't on Virtual Console. You'll be surprised at the results of how much more you'll be getting out of them. This is also something that makes the Switch versions of games, 1 or 2, if you're someone who is having a hard time justifying getting the Switch version of a game because the Switch's technology is just not as good as other consoles, this will help justify it more. The Xbox and PlayStation versions of the game don't have these control options and don't let you use a variety of proven classic controllers that are comfortable for people. What was once a version with lower processing power is suddenly a benefit. It suddenly has the edge and the leg up over the other consoles. Aside from the fact that it can just be played on the go. And that is all I have to go over about that particular thing. About that particular feature. I'm just going to finish getting this 5th shield. You can actually grind to get 9 as long as you're fast enough in the first level. This'll even present an advantage over the original console, since you couldn't do this on the original console unless you order a lot of specialized controllers. But the Switch makes it easier and usable on plenty of other consoles besides just those ones. Alright, that's enough of that.